Welcome back to the Go on the Match podcast. Today I'm joined by the Athletic's James Pearce. James was formerly a journalist at the Liverpool Echo for 14 years before making the move to the Athletic to cover all things Liverpool FC. James, thanks for giving up your time today, mate, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
No problem, Mike. How are you? You okay?
All good, mate, yeah. Okay, so I want you to take us back to your childhood and following Liverpool. Where were you born and how did your love for Liverpool Football Club begin?
Yeah, I was born in a city called Bath in the southwest of England. So and I was born in '77. So as a football mad kind of 6, 7, 8-year-old in the mid '80s, everyone in my primary school was either Liverpool or Everton. Of course, at the time they were the two dominant forces in English football, and every day we'd be over the park kicking the ball around after school, and I'd say probably half of us had red shirts, half of us had blue, and it just went from there really. Just kind of bit. I know a lot of people it gets passed down from their dad and the rest of it. My dad was a football fan, but not like a real fervent one. He didn't really particularly have a team, so it was. Rather than kind of him taking me to games, it was more kind of I started getting on his case repeatedly, desperate for him to take me to matches. So living down in the southwest, we used to do quite a lot of the away games. So like Villa away and Coventry away and Southampton away, and the ones that weren't too far off. I think back to those early 90s when Liverpool did actually play in Bath once. I didn't think I'd ever see that. I didn't think that would ever happen. But it was when Bristol Rovers were ground sharing with Bath City, and it was actually en route to Liverpool winning the FA Cup in 1992. And it was the only time I've ever seen Twerton Park, which is the home of Bath City, packed to the rafters. I think there was about 9,000 in there that night, and usually they get about 500-600 at a Bath City game. But 1-1 draw, and then Liverpool ended up sneaking through in the replay at Anfield. So it was October 1990 was when I finally convinced my dad to take me to Anfield for the first time. So that was like an early birthday present. I would have been coming up to. I was 12, kind of going on 13 at that time, and it was Liverpool-Chelsea. I think it was like about mid-October. It was a 2-0 win. Rush and Steve Nicol with the goals, and it was everything that I thought it would be in terms of just remember now. There's like the hairs on the back of your neck standing up when you hear the cop singing "You Never Walk Alone," and it was so different then because you used to just be able to wait around in the old Maidstone car park. I remember we were there probably for an hour and a half after the game, and filled my boots in terms of autographs in my book and pictures with players and all the rest of it. Even buying a copy of the old Pink Echo, which you used to be able to buy outside the ground by that point. An hour and a half, but maybe 2 hours after the game that had that day's match report in. Which is the Pink Echo's obviously long since bitten the dust, but it was just I think probably the funniest story from that trip to Anfield was I remember on the way back home, it was my dad is a notoriously slow driver, so I've got to be honest, back then it felt like Liverpool was at the other end of the planet compared to Bath. It didn't feel like it was only 200 miles away, and he bought me this scarf outside the ground, and it had Liverpool 18 times champions of England on it, and I remember saying to him, "You bought me the wrong one here. This will be out of date in May." Unbelievably, it was only out of date a couple of months ago, and I did dig it out of the loft actually, this old scarf, and I did have it on that night that the 30-year wait was finally ended.
Wow, that's something to say, really, isn't it? So, everyone kind of has that moment, I suppose, regardless of your support. When you're going up those stairs for your first game and you see the pitch and the green pitch kind of smacks you in the face, doesn't it? And when you were going, do you kind of remember those? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I really do. Yeah. I remember just the just that feeling of being in amongst all the fans and feeling that buzz and that kind of murmur of expectation in the build up to the game. And yeah, you're right. I can vividly remember walking up the old steps in that. We were sat in the old main stand down towards the Kop end, and of course back then the Kop was still standing as well in 1990. So yeah, seeing the grass for the first time, and just little things like that, and catching a glimpse of John Barnes in the flesh warming up, and Barnes and Rush were my absolute heroes as a kid. So I don't think you ever forget memories like that.
Yeah. So what does a standard match day look like for you now, being in journalism, and what do you kind of miss most about going to the match as a fan? Because obviously you still go in the match as a fan, but is there anything about being in the stands as a fan that you maybe miss compared to being in journalism?
Yeah, I think you definitely do miss a lot of things, really. I mean, it was probably I went to Liverpool University when I was 18, and to do a degree in history, and basically just picked Liverpool because I wanted to be close to Anfield, and I wanted to be able to go every week. So that was, I had some fantastic times. I know it wasn't the most trophy laden period. It was kind of like mid-90s under Roy Evans, and but yeah, with my mate Pete, who I lived with at university, I do miss that. The meeting up at the pub a few hours before the game and having a few pints, and then and then it was and even after some wins in recent years, like I think back to probably the best night I've ever had at Anfield, and probably the best night most people have ever had at Anfield who were there would say the Barcelona fight back. And I think that's probably the perfect example of a game when you really after something like that, the emotion and the jubilation and the ecstasy of that, you want to just go out with your mates and talk about it and savor it. You don't really want to go back home and bury your head in a laptop for 2-3 hours. So no, I mean, it's what I do, I absolutely love, and very, very privileged and honoured to do what I do. But yeah, it does change the match day experience an awful lot, because sometimes you can feel quite torn. But I think back to probably the fight back against Borussia Dortmund en route to the Europa League final in 2016, and obviously Lovren famously scored in the last minute, and things like that are quite odd, really, when you're a fan and a journalist, and because you've got the joy, the fan in you is absolutely buzzing with the last minute winner. Yet, from a professional viewpoint, you're pulling your hair out because you're pretty much having to delete 500-600 words and completely start again on, especially on a night game when when I was at the Echo, you had very little time between the game finishing and the deadline for the paper. So things like that can be quite testing.
Yeah, I remember that Dortmund game. I went to that one, and I mean, I was in Concert Square that night at the bar for about 3 hours, just contemplating what actually happened. So we were all a bit delirious on that one, weren't we? So I wanted to kind of understand how you got into journalism, and is that something that you've always wanted to do?
Yeah. I've got to be honest. From probably the age of about 13, 14, it was like most kids growing up obsessed with football. I wanted to be a professional, but I think I remember crying my eyes out when I got a rejection letter after going for a trial at Southampton, and that was probably as close as I ever got. So I think I always loved English at school. I always I suppose it's quite sad in a way, but I've still got scrapbooks with all the games my dad, ticket stubs and stuff from the games my dad used to take me to, and I'd always write a little match report in the scrapbook of the game we'd been to, and and I think even when we were at senior school, it was one of those ones where they say, right, you've got to pick somewhere to go and do some work experience. And I remember going to the newspaper, the Bath Chronicle in my home city, and doing some work there, and I just absolutely loved the buzz and the feel of being in a newsroom. And things have changed an awful lot in journalism over the last 20 years, but back then when you used to be able to you'd be working on a story, and then half an hour later you'd hear the presses downstairs whirring into action, and within 45 minutes a copy of that paper is slapped on your desk. And it was I just being around that environment, I was like, this is amazing, this is what I want to do. And then to be honest, I just volunteered for anything anything they needed doing on like a freelance basis, I'd do. Talking like real 8th, 9th, 10th tier of English football games in front of 50, 60 people. Go and cover it and do a couple of 100 words for them, and go and interview a gymnast or a local hockey player or a swimmer. Just anything really to get experience. And then I worked on the student paper when I was at Liverpool University for 3 years, and then went off backpacking around Australia for 6 months after uni. And then the paper in Bath had said to me, look, we don't have any jobs going at the moment, but when one does come up, it's yours. Then I was actually in Australia, and they said, the job's yours, but you're going to have to come back in 3 weeks. So I cut short that trip and started off. So that was in kind of May 2000.
Fantastic. So obviously when you were going to Anfield and you started doing the journalism, was it quite difficult to kind of put your professional hat on and kind of take yourself out of that fan side of things? Or was that something that came very naturally to you? Because I can imagine when you're doing the journalism, obviously when you're writing down, everything's got to be in shorthand, but then maybe the fan in you just maybe wants to just sit there and watch the game and obviously get up singing and that. Was that quite hard at first, or?
Yeah, I think it was something you got to grips with. I mean, to be honest, when it was quite a gradual thing for me, because even when I joined, because I worked in Bath for 5 years and then got the job in the Echo in June of 2005, so it was like the month after Istanbul. And even when I joined the Echo, I was still I tended to, because obviously it was so competitive, everyone wanted to write about football, and Liverpool in particular, that I tended to do the jobs that no one else wanted to do. A lot of the smaller sports. So it was quite rare in the first few years at the Echo to even be able to get my hands on a press pass, to be able to go to Anfield. And initially you might just get trusted with doing. Benitez would have been manager then, and sometimes you'd be trusted with typing up the Benitez quotes. But I think you soon kind of got to grips with the etiquette of press boxes. I think I've still broken the etiquette of press boxes many times over the years when things have got dramatic. But no, I think I've always thought and hoped that being a fan is much more of a help than a hindrance, because you do need to detach yourself a little bit from the emotion of it, but also not too much, because I think it certainly helps if you. Being a fan, I think hopefully it means that you're tapped into what other fans are thinking, what they, the issues and the topics that they really care passionately about, maybe the concerns they've got about the team and all the rest of it. So I've always thought that being a fan was it was more of a help, really, hopefully, in terms of generating content that people are interested in.
Yeah, naturally knowing the information. So I mean, I want to kind of touch on some topics now to do with the club. I've touched on the previous episodes that I've done with other fans of different clubs, how much of a problem touting of tickets is in football now for match days and everything. So I wanted to get your take, if you've got one, on it all. And are you aware if the club are aware of it themselves? And are they looking at putting measures in place in the future to kind of stomp out touting? Because obviously it's such a massive issue for all football clubs at the moment.
Yeah, it is a huge issue, and Liverpool have taken steps in recent years, and I know that they're very, very passionate about taking further steps. I think they know this is a big issue, that you've got touts with dozens and dozens of members cards, and that are horrendously ripping people off left, right, and centre. And I've spoken to fans, especially people that have come from overseas and are that desperate to lay their hands on tickets that they've paid eye-watering sums of money for tickets that just didn't exist, or are fakes, and they get turned away at the turnstiles. So no, it's Liverpool are more than aware of that. I think they have. I know Peter Moore, who's obviously recently left as CEO. It was one of his kind of big topics he wanted to address. They employ private investigators to try and bring people to account for the things that for the behaviour of touts, and I think we'll see a lot more of that. I think with COVID, of course, going forward, you can have a situation where, because of the health situation, when fans are allowed back into games, initially, everyone, you're going to have to prove that you are the person whose name is on the ticket, and and they're not going to be transferable. I know Liverpool have addressed the issues with season tickets, because I think, I'm sure we all know so many people, season ticket holders, who use season tickets or have used season tickets that aren't in their name, because they just tend to get passed. No one really ever gives a season ticket back, do they? They just pass it on, or they sell it on, or so I know Liverpool now have had they've had an amnesty in terms of trying to ensure that they know exactly who's in the ground, and I think that will just grow and grow going forward, to the point where everyone does have to prove that they are who it says on the ticket, because it's not, there is a genuine issue there in terms of supply and demand, of course, which will be assisted slightly when Liverpool do get round to rebuilding the Anfield Road end. They're still committed, the owners, to getting cracking on that at some point in 2021. But yeah, touting is a huge issue, and Liverpool do take it seriously.
Yeah, I suppose it's quite reassuring for fans to know that obviously they are aware of it, but they also want to do something about it as well. So no, that's really good. I wanted to ask you about Trent. So obviously he's really living every kid's dream as a Liverpool fan. And I'm absolutely made up, given how humble he is at such a young age and what he's already achieved in the game. I wanted to get your opinion on whether you see traits of Gerrard and Trent, because obviously you do the interviews with him, you'll see him, what he's like in and around the ground and everything. When he inevitably, in my opinion, takes over as captain, do you see him becoming one of the all-time great captains of the club?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think it's unbelievable to think that Trent is still only 21 years of age, which is scary when you think, at the age of 21, there's a lot of very talented kids still playing under 23s football in the academy system who are dreaming of trying to make the leap into the senior setup at whatever club they're at. And when you think Trent is already a Champions League winner, a Premier League winner, clearly, not only England's best right back, but for me the most complete right back in world football. It is so exciting to think what he could go on to achieve. And I've been very lucky to sit down with him and do a number of interviews over the years. And I always remember the first one I did with him. He couldn't have been either 17 or 18 at the time, and I was just absolutely blown away by just the confidence with which he spoke and how assured he was. And in fact, in that interview, he talked about wanting to captain Liverpool one day. This is my club. I don't want to ever go anywhere else. I want to captain. I believe I will captain this club. And you thought to yourself, with some people, if some people had said that, you'd say it was arrogance, but it wasn't. It was just belief and confidence. And do you know what? The only player I've ever had close dealings with there definitely is a similarity with Steven Gerrard.
Yeah.
In terms of not just talent, but just the personality, the aura, and I know Trent's aura is obviously still growing. It's not. He's not. Of course, he's got a long way to go in terms of reaching his absolute peak in the game. But when you look at what he's achieved already, I just can't wait to watch what happens next. And there's no doubt he's destined to captain this football club and hopefully spend. You'd love to think that he would be a one club man and finish his career as a. There's no reason why I don't see why he won't when he calls it a day in what probably 12, 13, 14 years time. He'll be regarded up there with, it could well be the debate is not just over, is it Kenny Dalglish or Steven Gerrard? It could be, is it Trent Alexander-Arnold? Because, he's got the lot. He's such a gifted footballer. And he lives his life right as well. I think that's such an important thing. I know when I used to go to the academy around the time when he was just breaking through, you'd speak to the coaching staff at Kirby and you speak to Alex Inglethorpe and they'd say, one of the big pluses with Trent, which gives him a fantastic chance of making it, he's surrounded by such good people. He comes from a great family that have always kept his feet on the floor. His brother is his representative. His mum has been an absolute inspiration for him, Diane. And where sometimes that can be a hindrance for kids not being surrounded by good people. They get full of their own importance, or they get some bad advice. He has been guided expertly, and that as well bodes really well going forward in terms of what he might kick on and the heights he might still hit for Liverpool.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you can play on the pitch and get a couple of assists and a couple of goals, but if you're not as good as a man off the pitch and as a person, which is like, he's shadowing Gerrard and that sort of respect for me. So, all great things could have come from him. A bit of a random question that I wanted to throw in here, something that I'm really interested in getting your thoughts on. So the deal that the club have got with Nike now, obviously it takes the club to a different level in terms of revenue and offers the club an even wider range of distribution. But do you feel that things such as, the Vapor kit being more expensive than the stadium kit, do you think that divides the fan base in terms of, families that can afford to pay for the more expensive one to those that can't?
I must admit, I'm not a massive fan of the two different shirts, and I think the price is eye-watering, isn't it? When you look at it, and especially with the fact that it doesn't feel like it was that long ago when kits only got changed every couple of years, and of course that went out the window, and now you're going to have 3 kits, and you probably got a situation where parents up and down the land are going to have a clamour for 3 different kits a year from now. So I certainly sympathise with that, and I don't. It's a bit crazy in my book having 2 different shirts that you can buy, especially the top whack the more expensive one is. I think in general the Nike deal is very good news for Liverpool, of course, financially. I think it was a very different type of deal to the New Balance one, where Liverpool have taken a lower fee guaranteed from Nike, which I think raised a lot of eyebrows initially, because people were thinking they're going to get 70-80 million, and then I was down in London for the court case when New Balance were fighting to retain the contract last autumn, and people go, hang on a minute, why is there only 30 million a year guaranteed with this 5-year deal with Nike? But when you look at the actual small details, the fact that they're guaranteed 20% of all royalties, I don't think that includes footwear, but everything else, that is the attraction for Liverpool, that as they continue to grow and get bigger commercially, the value of that contract with Nike will grow and grow with it over the next 5 years. So, and with all the various bonuses, that are locked into it, I've spoken to various people who say it could be anything between 60 and 80 million a year, depending on, just how extensive the sales are. So, I think it's a mark of how far the club's come, the fact that they had so many of the elite sports companies almost fighting over them, really, and falling over themselves to try and win the contract, because it doesn't certainly seem like that long ago that Adidas walked away saying that just didn't think that Liverpool provided decent value for money, and I don't think anyone would say that these days.
So going forward now, what are you most excited about for the future of the club? Obviously, we've been recently very successful under Klopp, but is there something that stands out for you you're most excited about?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of this coming season, I'm excited about seeing how Liverpool handle the shift in the dynamic from being the challengers to being the champions, and from being the ones now with the target on their backs, and how do they handle that? Because defending a title is very, very difficult. Obviously City did it relatively recently, but I think you probably got to go back 15 years or so to Man United for the last time anyone else had done it. So I'm interested to see in that. I want to see as well how Klopp kind of incorporates a lot of the really exciting young talent that's coming through. Of course, there's always a clamour for expensive new signings, but I know, Klopp has got huge hopes for people like Nico Williams and Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott, and we've seen, Billy Cometio, a young French defender, come from nowhere really to catapult himself into Klopp's plans this summer. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think probably longer term, because we're committed till 2024. I'm really intrigued to see how he goes about, almost created a second great Liverpool team, because he's assembled one absolutely outstanding team that deserves to be ranked up there with certainly the best Liverpool team I've ever seen. But yeah, I think when you look at by 2024, you're going to have a situation where the front three will be 33. You're going to have Jordan Henderson will be 34. Virgil van Dijk will be towards the twilight years as well, and that's going to be really interesting how he deals with that. How you wouldn't want to change too much around the same time. So slowly phasing out players who have done so much for you. That's a real challenge, and it's one that Klopp's never really had to do before, because when you think of the success he had at Dortmund, they continually had to evolve, but that was mainly because he kept having his best players cherry picked away from him. So it's I think it's testament to what Klopp has done at Liverpool that I think the days of worrying every summer that Liverpool are going to lose one of their absolute world-class elite talents have gone, haven't they? Since Coutinho was obviously the last one, but since then, with the success Liverpool have had, it's he's made Liverpool a final destination for top players rather than just a stepping stone to one of the Spanish giants. Because for me, if you go to Real Madrid or you go to Barcelona from Liverpool at the moment, it's a step down, because it's when you look at the silverware that Liverpool have amassed in the last 15 months. So there's that's going to be interesting for me, that how he handles that, because he's got he's got the opportunity. Is more than capable of defending the title this season, but certainly you think kind of beyond that, then he will need to start embarking on that challenge of freshening things up a bit.
Yeah. So following on from Klopp there, I wanted to get your thoughts on his successor when his contract finishes. So there's lots of talk of Gerrard and Nagelsmann, to name a few. Having listened to Carragher's podcast last year on the greatest games of Gerrard, they talk about how they know the club won't just give him the job because he was a legend of the club, and how he knows he may need another experience after Rangers to give him that challenge to be in pole position for the Liverpool job. Do you feel as if the club are already making plans to identify Klopp's successor, or is that something they're not really looking at and it's not in the pipeline at the moment?
No, I still think it's too early for Liverpool to really start putting a succession plan in place. I think we're probably at least 2 years away from that being a serious discussion. Yeah, in the boardroom and in the FSG offices in Boston, because I think things can change so fast in football, and Nagelsmann is he's come from nowhere in the space of a few years, really, in terms of how much he's enhanced his reputation, and rightly so, because he's done a fantastic job and is quite rightly highly rated. But I just think it's too early to say. I think I'd have to admit I love the idea of Steven Gerrard taking over from Klopp in 2024, but even that he still has to kind of prove himself in the time between now and then, and he's got a job on his hands at Rangers. I think he's done a really, really good job there so far in terms of closing the gap to Celtic. But he will know better than anyone that despite the tough times that Rangers have had, the expectation levels are still huge. He's expected to go and win trophies there this season. So will Rangers prepare Steven Gerrard for Liverpool. I think, maybe if he does enjoy real success in the coming years, or he might need to go somewhere else and have another job in between. But another interesting one for me would be someone like Pep Linders, who is massively respected as a coach, has played a huge part in the success that Klopp has overseen at Anfield. Really well respected by all the players and the staff. Of course, he had a very brief stint as a manager on his own over in Holland before coming back to Liverpool. So I wouldn't completely rule someone like him out the running in terms of course, that would be a promotion from within. But I just think at the moment it's probably a bit too soon to say. But I think the one thing I think we can be pretty sure of is Klopp won't be going anywhere between now and the summer of 2024. I think he's that commitment from him. I know probably in modern football we've become used to contracts not really being worth the paper they're written on, but Jurgen Klopp is a man of his word, and he said that he is committed till the summer of 2024, and I've got absolutely no reason to doubt that is the case. So I think I'd be really surprised if he went on beyond that. I know he talked recently about how he'd promised his wife that he'd have a kind of a year-long sabbatical at the end of his time at Liverpool, and that doesn't surprise me because I think he's a man that he lives the job 24/7. He's so passionate and so emotional about the work he does that it must take a huge amount out of him. So I'd be amazed if Jurgen Klopp managed another club side. I think for me it almost looks mapped out that another 4 years at Liverpool, maybe a bit of time off, and then I think the German national job is certainly one that I think would kind of lure him back into the dugout again at some point.
Yeah, I think if he goes ahead and does that, he goes down as one of the all-time great managers ever, doesn't he? So, finally, the podcast is centered around Going the Match. So with every podcast we're doing, I want to end by asking, what are your top 3 favourite matches you've been to? So it doesn't have to be based on the 90 minutes itself, but it could be something that happened during the day or for whatever reason. I know you'll definitely have a few there, so...
Yeah, do you know what? It's difficult to narrow it down, isn't it? Because there's been with so many amazing nights and occasions to pick from as both and since I've been a journalist following the club around. I think I'd probably pick. I wasn't lucky enough to be in Istanbul. Much, one of the ones that you just kick yourself. I really wish, obviously, I'd been there, but it was very close to when I was moving up to Liverpool to take the job at the Echo, and just had too much going on at the time. But I was in Dortmund for the UEFA Cup final against Alaves in 2001, and I think probably because of what happened in Istanbul 4 years later, it kind of, that UEFA Cup final almost gets overlooked a little bit in terms of just what an incredible game it was. And I think it was just everything about that day makes that in my top 3 because traveling as a fan, I think we only had 3 tickets between 5 of us in our group, and we ended up getting a couple outside the ground, and I ended up actually sitting completely randomly. My ticket was in the row in front of the kind of the non-playing Liverpool players and staff who were there. So I had kind of Jamie Redknapp and Jari Litmanen sat behind me. and Ronnie Moran, I remember, was there, and I had a big hug with Ronnie Moran when that golden goal went in, when obviously Gary McAllister whipped in that free kick and it brushed off the defender's head and flew into the corner. A crazy major European final to win one like that, 5-4. So Alaves would have to be in there, and obviously you've got the semi-finals against Chelsea, the Champions League, the thrashing of Real Madrid. I think the best night I've ever had at Anfield would have to be that Barcelona game I mentioned earlier. I think you've got to find room for that in the top 3, just because and I class myself as quite an optimistic person in general, and quite optimistic as a fan, and try and look on the bright side. But I got to admit, up that night in Stanley Park, and and walked across to the ground, I didn't think Liverpool had a prayer. I just, not because I didn't think Liverpool couldn't score, 3 or 4 goals, but I just thought they wouldn't keep a clean sheet against, the firepower of Suarez and Messi and all the rest of them. So, that was, and I think, obviously we talked earlier on, didn't we, about the challenge of combining life as a fan and a journalist. Yeah, that was a tough one, because I was just pretty much shell shocked at the end of that game, because you were just thinking, what have we just witnessed here? And
incredible.
Suddenly you realise you've only got half an hour after the final whistle to try and turn it into 1,000 words, which when you're struggling to make sense of it in your head, it's not particularly straightforward. So Alaves, Barcelona, and then I suppose the one obvious one would be clearly Madrid, seeing Liverpool win the Champions League. But I think I'll actually go for one from last season, which was beating Man United at home. And just one moment in particular that just for me was the absolute highlight and pinnacle of the Premier League title winning season was when Alisson got rid of that ball and fed Mo Salah, and he ran from the halfway line and scored against United in front of the Kop. And I just remember the outpouring of emotion, because it was, Liverpool was so far ahead in the title race, yet nobody wanted to tempt fate. Nobody wanted to talk about winning the league because of what happened the year before with losing the advantage and getting pipped by a single point, and of course what happened in 13-14 with the slip. And I just love the fact that it was like someone had released a kind of a pressure valve, and it was like everyone just decided, right, sod it. This is the moment when we are going to tell the world that we are going to win the league this season, and we're not going to keep quiet about it anymore. And that booming rendition, and now you're going to believe us by the Kop. I don't think anyone was in any doubt at that stage. So I think I'd have to find room for that one in my top 3 as well.
Fantastic. So I don't think there's any better way to finish the podcast than talking about beating United to go on and win the league. So James, a massive thank you for coming on and giving up your time tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity, mate.
Sorted. No problem, Mike. Good chatting to you.
If you haven't already, please subscribe, follow and share, and of course, leave a 5-star rating.